The sound of laughter and clinking glasses filled the air as I walked into the family gathering. The house was crowded, the familiar faces of my relatives all gathered in celebration. I'd been invited, of course. After all, I was still part of this family despite how distant I felt from them these days. I, Adam, 57 years old, had spent much of my life trying to support my family, to make everyone happy. But that evening, I had no idea the storm that was about to hit me. "Dad, you finally made it," my son Ryan called out with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His tone was off. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, but I brushed it aside. It was just another family gathering. Surely nothing could go wrong. But as I walked toward him, things took a sharp turn. "Why don't you take a seat, old man?" Ryan sneered, and that was the first crack in the foundation. It was strange. The way he said it. Something wasn't right. I tried to ignore the unease building in my chest. I sat down trying to relax, but my eyes kept shifting between Ryan and the others. The chatter around me felt distant, like I wasn't even part of the conversation. I hadn't even taken a sip of my drink when Ryan stood up abruptly, and with a sharp, cold glare, he faced the room. "Listen, everyone," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Do you know why I can't stand my dad?" The whole room went silent. I could feel every set of eyes on me now. I can't stand the way he treats me. He's just a burden. He never helped me, never gave me anything. I've been asking for the last few months for him to give me that house of my grandparents, the one worth $5 lakh, but no, he doesn't care. He's selfish. I should have been given it. Instead, I'm stuck here struggling while my dad lives in the home my parents left behind. I froze. The words hit me like a slap in the face. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'd always supported Ryan, from his first job to helping him get on his feet when he struggled financially. I'd sacrificed so much for him, my time, my money, my well-being. Yet here he was, humiliating me in front of everyone, calling me a burden, all because I refused to hand over my parents' house. I could feel my heart sink as the room fell into an uncomfortable silence. The worst part was no one was defending me. My brother, who had always been close to me, turned his eyes down. My sister's gaze shifted away, pretending she hadn't heard anything. Even my wife, Sarah, sat in stunned silence, too afraid to speak up. Ryan continued, his voice dripping with disdain. "He's probably sitting on that money, refusing to help me. But no more. If you all want to know the truth, I'm done with him. He's not my father anymore." The hurt, the humiliation. It hit me like nothing I had ever felt before. This wasn't just about the house. It was about everything I had done for him, all the sacrifices I had made, only to have him tear me down in front of everyone. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I wiped them away quickly. I wasn't going to let him see how much it hurt. I couldn't show weakness. I looked at him one last time, my son, the one I had worked so hard for, the one I had put my heart and soul into, and I realized in that moment that he didn't care. He never did. "Ryan," I said quietly, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and sadness. "You don't understand. It's not about the money. It's about respect. I've given you everything I have, and this is how you repay me." But he didn't even look at me. He simply turned his back and walked away. The others followed suit, pretending nothing had happened, as if this was normal. I stood there, frozen, the weight of everything I had done for this family crashing down on me. I had given so much, and yet this is how they saw me. As nothing more than a wallet, a tool for their desires. I realized that night that my sacrifices, my love, my care, they had never been appreciated. They had never been enough. The decision had been made. The anger I felt from the family gathering still burned deep inside me, but it was no longer the kind of anger that would fade with time. This was something different, something that had been building for years, and now it was all coming to a head. For so long I had been the one to give. Whether it was financially, emotionally, or physically, I had always been the provider. I thought that was what a father did. I thought it was my role to sacrifice everything for my family. But in return, I had been treated like a cash machine, expected to be there whenever they needed something without a second thought for what I needed or wanted. I sat in my living room, the silence of the house pressing down on me like a heavy weight. The house I had worked so hard to build, the same one Ryan wanted to tear apart for his own benefit. I looked around, my eyes settling on the photograph of my parents that sat on the mantelpiece. They had worked hard for everything they had. They had taught me the importance of family, of love, and of hard work. But somewhere along the way I had lost sight of all of that. My own children had lost sight of it too. It was time to put an end to it. I couldn't keep living this way, sacrificing my own happiness for people who didn't even care. I had already given them so much. I'd paid for Ryan's college, bought him cars, helped him out of financial trouble, and even gave him a sizable amount when he wanted to start his own business. And what did I get? A cruel, public humiliation in front of everyone I cared about. I thought of all the times I had helped him when no one else would. He was my flesh and blood, and yet here I was, a laughingstock. I took a deep breath and picked up my phone. It was time to do something I had been avoiding for years. Time to stop enabling their behavior. I called my bank and set up a meeting to ensure that Ryan would never have access to any of my accounts without my permission. I wasn't going to be a bank for them anymore. Later that night, I sent an email to my financial advisor, instructing him to transfer my assets into a trust, one that Ryan wouldn't have access to unless he learned some respect. I was done. No more handouts. No more supporting their choices. It was time for them to learn that I wasn't just a source of money. I was a person. The next day, I received a text from Ryan asking if we could talk. I hadn't spoken to him since the gathering. I had no interest in engaging with him right now, but I knew I needed to make things clear. I replied, "We can talk. But first, you need to understand something. I'm not here to be your personal ATM anymore. From now on, you're on your own." His response came quickly, and I could already feel the arrogance in his words. "You're just bitter because you can't give me what I want. That house is worth more than anything you'll ever leave me. If you think you're going to teach me a lesson by being cold, you're wrong." I stared at his words, feeling the weight of his entitlement pressing down on me. It wasn't about the house. It was about respect, about gratitude. He thought I owed him everything, but I didn't. I had given him everything I had, and he was still ungrateful. I looked at my phone, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the need to apologize or explain myself. I had done nothing wrong. And it was time to stop letting him or anyone else make me feel like I had. That evening, Sarah and I sat down for dinner, the table between us almost a metaphor for the distance that had grown in our relationship over the years. She was quiet, and I could see the worry in her eyes. "Adam," she said, her voice tentative, "you know Ryan's upset. He's been calling, trying to get a hold of you. He wants to apologize." I shook my head, setting my fork down. "He doesn't need to apologize. He needs to learn. He needs to understand that respect is earned, not given. I've spent years giving him everything, and for what? To be insulted in front of my own family?" Sarah looked down, her lips trembling as if she wanted to say something but wasn't sure what. "I don't want to lose him, Adam. He's our son." "I don't want to lose him either," I said, my voice softening. "But I can't keep enabling him. I've given him everything, Sarah. Everything. And I'm done." There was a long silence, the air thick with unspoken words. Finally, Sarah nodded. "I understand. But this is going to change everything." I wasn't sure what it would change, but at that moment I felt a surge of relief. The decision was made. I wasn't going to let my family walk all over me anymore. I wasn't going to be the one who always gave, only to be tossed aside when they didn't need me. And so I waited. I waited for the day when Ryan would finally understand. I waited for the day when he would realize that family wasn't about what you could get, but what you could give, and not just material things but love, respect, and gratitude. But as I waited, I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer the person I once was. I was no longer the man who let people walk all over him. I was done being a doormat. The moment Ryan turned his back and walked away, I felt a numbness wash over me. The voices around me continued, but they felt distant, almost like I was hearing them from underwater. My body was still there, surrounded by people, but my mind had already retreated. I could feel the weight of everything I had given to my family pressing down on my chest. The sacrifices, the countless hours of hard work, the endless support that had gone unnoticed. And all for what? I left the gathering quietly without saying another word. The last thing I wanted was to cause a scene, even though my heart was shattering into pieces. I sat alone in my car, staring at the dashboard, my hands trembling. I couldn't even remember the drive home. My thoughts kept circling around one simple truth. I had given everything and yet they still didn't care. As I sat in my car, the memories of my life with this family began to flood my mind. I remembered the early days when I worked double shifts to provide for Sarah, Ryan, and my younger children. We lived paycheck to paycheck, but I did it. Every extra cent went into making sure they had food on the table, clothes on their backs, and a roof over their heads. I didn't mind. It was what I was supposed to do. I was a father, a provider. My job was to give them the life I never had growing up. When Sarah wanted a new kitchen for the house, I worked even harder. I didn't tell her how exhausted I was or how much it hurt to never be able to sit down for a proper meal with the family. I just gave. I sacrificed. But even more than that, I supported Ryan. He was always my priority, my first concern. I pushed aside my own needs and dreams just to make sure he had what he wanted. I paid for his college, gave him money when he needed it, even bought him that car when he couldn't afford one. All of this, and what did I get in return? The memory of him as a child flooded back. I remember him sitting in my lap, asking me to read him stories before bed, looking at me with those big, trusting eyes. He used to tell me I was his hero. I believed it. I gave him everything I had, all my love, my energy, my life. But now he called me a burden in front of everyone. He said I didn't care, that I never supported him when all I did was sacrifice for him. He didn't remember the countless nights I stayed up worrying about his future, the times I put my needs aside just to make sure he had everything. He didn't remember how much I'd given him. To him, I was just a stepping stone, something to use until I was no longer needed. I wiped my eyes, letting out a shaky breath. It wasn't just the house, the 5 lakh USD property. It was everything. The years I spent building a life for my family, my parents' memories, their legacy, that they now wanted to erase for their own convenience. To them, it was just a house, just an object. But to me, it was a piece of my soul, a reminder of my parents, of the sacrifices they made for me. How could I just hand that over to someone who saw it as nothing more than a commodity? As I sat there, the weight of my choices crushed me. I had been the provider, the protector. But in the eyes of my family, I had become invisible. They saw me as nothing more than an ATM, someone to give and give without ever asking for anything in return. But I had done enough. I had given enough. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for people who didn't care. It was time to take back control. It was time to stop being the person everyone walked all over. I started the car and drove home in silence, my thoughts heavy with the realization that I had been wrong all along. I had been so blinded by my desire to provide for my family that I had forgotten to take care of myself. The following days passed in a blur. I kept replaying that moment at the family gathering in my head, trying to make sense of it. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Ryan's words were still echoing in my mind. And the more I thought about everything I'd done for him, the more I realized how ungrateful he was. I'd spent years trying to be a good father, a good husband. But all they saw was a man with money. They didn't see the tired, broken person beneath the facade. They didn't see the sacrifices I'd made, the years of hard work, the sleepless nights. I had been a fool. But no more. I hadn't seen Ryan in weeks. After the text exchange, I'd expected silence, or at best, a half-hearted apology. But instead he showed up, unannounced, standing on my front porch like nothing had happened. I opened the door and there he was, arms crossed, jaw clenched, and that same bitter glare I remembered from the family gathering. "We need to talk," he said, walking in without waiting for me to agree. I stepped aside, watching him pace across the living room like he owned the place. Like I still owed him something. "Dad, listen," he began. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this silent treatment thing? It's childish. You know damn well that house belongs to me. Grandma and Grandpa would have wanted that. And now you're just sitting on it like you're some kind of king?" I stared at him, my heart pounding, not from fear but from the weight of every word I'd swallowed over the years. "Sit down," I said calmly, pointing to the couch. He rolled his eyes but sat. For a few seconds neither of us spoke. Then I took a breath and said the thing I had been holding in for years. You think this is about a house? About money? Ryan, I gave you everything. I gave you your first car. Paid for college. Bailed you out of credit card debt more times than I can count. I helped you buy your first apartment and even helped you furnish it. I've supported you through every failure, every mistake, quietly, without asking for anything in return. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. No. You'll let me finish now. My voice was firm, strong. I was done shrinking. That house, I said, my voice trembling now, wasn't just real estate. It was your grandparents' life's work. It's where your mother and I were married. It's where you played as a kid. Where we buried your grandfather. You think I should just sign it over to you like it's a check to cash? You stood in a room full of our family and called me a dog. A dog, Ryan. His face twisted in discomfort. Maybe shame. But he said nothing. You humiliated me, I said. You broke something that day. And maybe you don't feel it now, but one day you will. Because money fades. But so does trust. And the truth is, I don't trust you anymore. He looked away. Silence. I walked over to the fireplace and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside were dozens of old photographs. His childhood birthdays. School awards. Vacation memories. I saved every moment. Because I believed in you. Even when you didn't deserve it. I set the box in front of him. What is this? He asked quietly. Everything you forgot. I stood up. And now it's time you remember. Because there won't be any more checks. No more phone calls asking for help. If you want to build a life, build it. But don't build it on my back. His face hardened. So that's it? You're cutting me off. No, I said. I'm setting you free. He stood up fast, knocking the box to the floor. Photos spilled everywhere. You're unbelievable, he hissed. You think this makes you noble? It makes you pathetic. I didn't flinch. I didn't yell. I just picked up a photo from the floor, him on his 6th birthday, frosting on his nose, and held it up. That's the boy I raised, I said softly. I hope he finds his way back someday. He stared at the photo for a second longer, then turned and left. No goodbye. The door slammed. Silence returned. I sat alone on the couch, the echoes of our confrontation still hanging in the air. For the first time in years I felt peace. Not joy. Not pride. Just peace. It was over. The days after Ryan left were oddly quiet. Not just in my home but in the whole rhythm of my life. The texts stopped. The calls ended. I used to wake up to endless notifications, banking requests, urgent messages, complaints. But now the silence was like a balm on an old wound. I finally had space to breathe. But it didn't take long for the consequences of my decision to ripple through the rest of the family. My phone buzzed one afternoon. Tina, my sister, had called. Adam, what the hell is going on with you and Ryan? I leaned back on the porch chair, sipping cold coffee. The breeze was warm and I felt strangely detached. He disrespected me in front of everyone, Tina. I've put up with enough. It ends now. She sighed. I get it. But he's your son. No, I said calmly. He's a grown man who's been treating me like an ATM for years. I didn't raise a man like that, but I enabled one. There was silence. You really aren't going to give him the house? That house, I said slowly, is my parents' legacy. It's where I spent the best years of my life. And it's where I'll spend the rest of my own. Not because it's worth $500,000, but because it's worth more than any number. Tina didn't respond. That week, I started pulling back the layers of my life, examining all the places where I had sacrificed for people who never gave it a second thought. I opened old receipts, Ryan's tuition, his failed restaurant, the new roof for his first house, the 10,000 USD I gave him when his business partner ran off with the cash. And then there were the gifts, luxury watches, furniture, rent, even a down payment on a new SUV when his old car suddenly stopped working. I tallied it all. Over 240,000 USD. Across 15 years. And in return he called me a dog. The betrayal stung, but what hurt more was how blind I had been. I thought I was helping my son. I was really training him to believe I was disposable, valuable only as long as my wallet stayed open. So I began to rebuild. I canceled the monthly transfers I'd been sending to Ryan's account. I called my attorney and made sure my will left the house to a local children's nonprofit in my parents' name, a final tribute to the kind of people they were. And I began volunteering every Friday at a nearby food pantry. Not to be praised, not to feel needed, but because I finally had the time and I wanted to give to people who understood gratitude. One evening, while closing up the pantry, a little boy with messy hair and big brown eyes tapped me on the arm. "Mister," he said, "thank you for the apples. They're my favorite." I knelt down to his level and smiled. "Mine too, buddy." It was the first genuine smile I'd felt in weeks. 3 months passed. Not a word from Ryan. Not from his wife. Not from his friends. But I didn't even chase a half-hearted birthday card. Instead, I filled my days with quiet mornings, walks through the old garden my mother once tended, and evenings with books I'd bought but never read. I met people at the pantry who thanked me with smiles that meant more than words. I mended the leaky roof with my own hands. I repainted the kitchen with the exact shade my wife had once loved. And I kept every single memory in that house alive. One Saturday while I was pruning the rosebushes out front, a black SUV pulled up. Ryan stepped out. I wiped the sweat off my brow and looked up at him, taller than I remembered but somehow smaller too. He didn't walk with confidence anymore. Just hesitation. "Hey," he said. I nodded. "Afternoon. Can we talk?" he asked. "Just 5 minutes." I paused, then nodded toward the porch. We sat in silence for a moment before he began. "I've been angry," he said, "for a long time. And I took it out on you." I didn't say a word. When Grandpa died, I thought the house would come to me. I don't even know why. Maybe I thought it would make up for everything. The failures. The money. The fact that you never gave up on me even when you should have. Still, I said nothing. "I was wrong to say what I said," he murmured. "And I'm sorry." There it was. The thing I never expected to hear, not from him. But I didn't jump up. I didn't hug him. I let the weight of everything just sit between us for a moment. Then I finally spoke. "Ryan, I don't hate you. I never did. But love without respect isn't love. It's a transaction. And I'm done with those." He looked down. "So, is this it?" I exhaled. "No. But it won't go back to the way it was. If you want a relationship with me, it'll be real. Built on time, not money. On honesty. Not guilt." He nodded slowly. "Okay." He stood up, hesitated, then reached into his pocket. A photo. Of the two of us. Fishing. He must have found it in that box he knocked over months ago. "I kept this," he said. "It used to mean something to me. I think it still does." I took the photo. Ran my fingers over the edges. And for the first time in a long while, I smiled. He walked to the car, paused, and looked back. "I'm gonna try, Dad. That's all I ever wanted. If you're reading this and you're a parent who spent a lifetime giving money, time, love, let me tell you something. You're allowed to draw the line. Love doesn't mean letting yourself be used. It means teaching others how to value what you give and who you are. I gave everything I had and almost lost myself doing it, but I took my dignity back. And in doing so, I found peace. I found purpose. I even found a second chance, not just with my son but with myself. Sometimes the greatest act of love is learning to say no. And sometimes the greatest revenge is choosing to live well with your head held high.